I looked at him. I wanted to engage him, but he was not interested. He took Tsego away. And I said to him, I wanted to see you because I want to know who took my daughter. So that if anything happens, at least I must know that I saw you.
Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. This is going to be a crime channel. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who don't know, my name is Donku and today we're going to be talking about Tsegofatso Pule and the tragedy that happened to her in 2020. So let's get into it. So Tsegofatso Pule was 28 years old. And she was born in Soweto, and she lived with her aunt and her brothers. They all lived with her aunt after her mom passed away. She was a young girl. She was a very bubbly young girl, but a lot of people say that she was very quiet. She was very reserved. She went to school, and she went to high school, and she went to university where she studied for a BA degree. When her family talks about Tsego, they will tell you that she was a very reserved child. She wasn't too out loud with her life. She was very reserved. She did what was expected of her. She went to school, and later in life she discovered that she had a life and passion for makeup and fashion and clothes, and she really loved that side of life, and she was creative, and she had learned how to become a makeup artist, and she also worked for the MAC Studio Cosmetics, and that was just something that she really loved to do. It's something that she found fulfilling. She was really creative when it came to that type of space, and that's just what she chose to do with her life. But in high school she did meet this man. Okay, I'm gonna cut that out. Let me carry on. In high school, before she went off to university, she met Tsugo Shoba, who she dated. He was obviously way older than she was, and they got into a relationship and they started dating all throughout high school and when she was in university. Now, the relationship was a bit rocky because Tsegofatso's aunt does say that when she met Ntuthuko, he didn't really show much care.
At him, I wanted to engage him, but he was not interested. He took Tsego away. And I said to him, I wanted to see you because I want to know who took my daughter. So that if anything happens, at least I must know that I saw you. He was not interested.
Show that he cared enough to be introduced to the family, to get to know the family. I mean, any normal boyfriend would be very excited and nervous to meet the family of his girlfriend, but Tsego's aunt does say that Tsugo just seemed very much uninterested in anything that was happening when he was meeting the family, which was obviously very odd. He just seemed like he had no interest. He didn't really say much to them. It seemed to him like the whole thing was just boring. And then Tsegofatso fell pregnant, and the relationship was very tumultuous. And we do find this out from the best friend of Tsego, Zintle. She speaks about how when Tsego fell pregnant, the relationship really did turn sour. Now, when Tsego was pregnant, Ntuthuko just didn't want the baby.
Pule's family learned of her pregnancy, they were excited. What shocked them was the way in which Shoba's family reacted to the news.
It was not a good conversation between Auntie Grace and Shoba's mom. You know, it was like when you force people to hear you that your child is pregnant by their son, that woman was not interested.
And it is revealed later that when Tsego was pregnant, this was actually her second pregnancy, and her first pregnancy he had actually made her get an abortion. But this time around, Tsego was determined that she was not going to go ahead and terminate the pregnancy. She wanted the baby and she wanted to see this pregnancy through. So this made the relationship very rocky. Besides all of that, everything else was fine. Tsego wasn't working at this moment because obviously she had to take a break as she was very heavily pregnant, because she was 8 months pregnant. Now, the way that the world gets introduced to Tsego, first it was via the missing person flyers that we all get on social media, whether it be Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And this is something that has been very much normalized in South Africa. It's every other given day you will see a missing persons poster of a woman or a child that has gone missing. And it's very disheartening because it's like we all know at the back of our minds that this might end in some sort of a tragedy. So on Thursday, Tsego went. She was going to go see her boyfriend Ntuthuko Shoba. She left home on Thursday, which was normal. She's a young lady, she's dating, you know, and she's pregnant. So at home they know that okay, Tsego has a boyfriend she's expecting a baby with. So she went to see him, and this was on Thursday. And then on Sunday, her family realized that okay, this is not like Tsego. Even if she does go out to see her boyfriend or meet with her boyfriend, she's usually back in like a day or two, but 4 days was seeming a bit excessive. So of course they try to find out, and Ntuthuko tells them that no, she left, I don't know where she is. So obviously they go and they report at the police station that Tsego is missing. They draft these missing persons letters, and they go up obviously in the whole country. And now it's just waiting on anticipation. Where is Tsego? Where is Tsego? And everybody's talking about the fact that she's pregnant, she's 8 months pregnant. There's no way that anything could have happened to somebody who is 8 months pregnant. So obviously the family goes out on a search. They're calling hospitals. They're trying to find out, she going to early labor, what happened, something. But like I'm saying, no one thinks that anything sinister has happened to somebody who is 8 months pregnant. That's just crazy, right? Obviously, even in the most violent of societies, there has to be some sort of honor, some code of honor to say that a woman who is in the process of bringing a life into this world, obviously she is off limits. Well, this wasn't the case. A few days later, some passerbys who were walking down the street in a very wooded area, they find a woman who looks very heavily pregnant hanging from a tree. Of course, the police are called, and it is discovered that it is Tsego, the one who her missing posters have gone out online previously. So when the news broke, this just broke everybody. Everyone in the country was just so shocked. Everybody was just so dismayed that how can something like this happen? She was pregnant. Who would want to hurt anyone who's pregnant? It doesn't even make sense, even in the most violent of societies. So from then onwards, obviously the police are contacting the last person to see Tsego, who it's her boyfriend, Ntuthuko Shoba. Now let's talk a little bit about Ntuthuko Shoba. Ntuthuko Shoba is a young man who apparently had made very good in his life. He's done very well. He's made a very good life for himself. Should I say, he was working at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange at that point. He was making very good money. He was just living this life where you think that this is a very educated black brother who went to school and he did all the right things. So obviously nobody is thinking that he has anything to do with this. Obviously, he's very forthcoming with the police. He wants to help. He goes with the police and he talks to them. They speak to him. They ask him his version of events, and he says that no, yes, she did come to see him, but he did see her off. She had arranged herself an Uber. She called an Uber and he picked her up and she left, and that's the last that he heard of her. So this whole time he thinks that she is home. So now the police are like, oh, okay, thank you for coming. You're free to go. We're going to look into this. So obviously the police go now. Everybody is looking for this Uber that Tsego had called for herself to come and get her from her boyfriend's place. Right. So now we're on the search for this Uber, and then the police go to the complex where Shoba lives, Tsego's boyfriend, and thank God there is CCTV footage of the gate where they look at it and they see that, oh, there she is. You can see in the tape where there's Ntuthuko and Tsego, the very heavily pregnant Tsego. She goes and the car comes by the Uber that Shoba told them that she was picked up by an Uber. So obviously the police take down the car and the make, and they're on the hunt now. They're looking for this car. They look for this car, and they find the car. So now they know who the car belongs to, where they can find the car, and the search is on. And by the time that they do find the car, they find the person who had been the last person to see Tsego, because obviously he is the person who saw her last, because he's the one who's picked her up and was supposed to be taking her home. When they do find this guy, he was found with luggage in his car. He was in the process of leaving the city, leaving the province, and he was running. And they got him. Obviously something is wrong here, so they ask him. He is hauled into interrogation. He is asked, what do you know about this girl? You were the last person to see her. Here you are on the footage. So there's no saying it wasn't me and all of that. Just tell us, where is she? What happened? Of course, he tries to play a game of cat and mouse with the police. Oh, I don't know. I dropped, which obviously it's not the truth. But surprisingly, this person who we now know as Muzikaise, he just breaks immediately. Muzikaise Malepane. He just breaks easily, and he tells the police everything, that yes, he was the one who picked up Tsegofatso, and he's the one who was apparently hired to kill her. I know, that's very strange. Who would want to kill an 8-month-old pregnant mom, like mom to be? Like, who would wanna end her life? This doesn't make any sense. So this is when the whole thing basically just goes belly up, because then Muzigaisa tells them that Ntuthuko, the father of Pule's unborn baby, is the one who hired him to kill her. So obviously the police are just confused. Why would you want to kill somebody? Okay, you didn't want the baby. There are a billion deadbeat parents in the world, deadbeat dads. You can just join the force and be a deadbeat. Why do you have to go the extra mile and kill somebody just because she's pregnant and you do not want the baby? This is where the whole case just goes belly up. Even though Ntuthuko had made himself very clear that he is not interested in having a baby with Tsego, Tsego didn't care. She was off it, and she told him that I'm doing this whether you're in or out, because I want this baby and I am not getting another abortion. It's just something that I'm not going to do. So now the story makes sense. You have a young lady who is in a tumultuous relationship with, say, tell us what happened. What do you know about this whole situation? To which Muzi tells them that Ntuthuko didn't want the baby, and he had tried throughout the entire pregnancy to convince Tsego to either have an abortion or do something, but he was very adamant that he didn't want the baby. And he was very frightened that the mother, that his fiance, this is where things get a bit interesting. This is where things get complicated. Because remember when I started the story, I told you that Tsego had been with Shoba since she was in high school. So this is not a new relationship. Tsego was 28 years old when this happened. So this is not a new relationship. This is a relationship that had been going on for quite some time. So what do you mean he has a fiance? Well, it turns out that Shoba has a fiance. There is a woman that is in his life that he had gone and paid lobola for. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, remember when his aunt was saying that, when Tsego's aunt was saying that when they met Shoba, he really wasn't interested in getting to know the family. He wasn't really interested in building any type of relationship. He just actually seemed annoyed, like he wanted to leave. So now we know why.
I wanted to engage him, but he was not interested. he took Tsego away.
He is not committed to this relationship with Tsego. He's got someone else in his life. And this is basically when everything unravels. So obviously, Pule has been found, Tsego, she's been found, and now there are messages on her phone. They're looking at the communication between her and Mr. Shoba, her baby's father. So when the police get to that information, they find out that Pule has been getting very threatening messages from this unknown person who is assumed to have been the other woman in Shoba's life. The other woman that Ntutsuko was saying, the fiance, apparently. The messages were very, very vile. They were very disturbing. They were threats. She was being slut-shamed in those messages. She was being told that you think he's serious with you. He's not serious. This is what he does. He's got a lot of side chicks. You're just another side chick. He doesn't care about you. The messages were very, very, very vile, and they were all geared to saying, break up with him, leave him alone. He doesn't want you. He's decided who he wants. Hence, he's already made things official by paying a dowry for someone else. Obviously, Tsego never found out who these messages were from, and she also didn't respond. But again, this is the type of girl that Tsego was. She was just a class act, because what is the point of going back and forth with some ghost account on your phone? This happens a lot. You get a message from somebody in your DMs, they're talking hella crazy at you. You don't know who it is. And the moment you respond, you're giving the troll, whoever's on the other end, power. You're giving them ammunition, because now they know that they've gotten to you. Now they can play this game with you. They can do this back and forth. So Tsego never responded to any of those messages. She just received them. She read them. They were threatening. They were calling her all sorts of names. They were threatening to come and beat her up. How can you just go around sleeping with everybody? You don't even know who the father of your child is. Things like that. And she never responded to those messages. But the police also found communication between Tsego and Ntutsuko Shoba, her boyfriend, the father of her baby. They found out messages where he was being very rude. He was telling her that he doesn't want the baby. He was ignoring her. She was begging him to give her some assistance. She wanted to go to the doctor. She needed, pregnant women need to go for these checkups and all of that. And he would ignore her for weeks. He would ignore her. He wouldn't respond to her. He was being very adamant that he didn't want the baby. The man who is way older than her. And we can go back and forth about somebody being a side chick and somebody doing this, but this is what I always say, that it's easy to stand up on your high horse and call somebody a side chick, but some people become side chicks in their own relationships. If you're looking at the timeline of these two relationships, we have this fiance who just popped up, we don't know from where, and we have Tsego who has been with this man ever since she was in high school. So you see that sometimes it happens that a person is in a committed relationship, but the other person is not in a committed relationship with you. And this is exactly what happened with Tsego. Tsego wasn't some side chick, and it's very disheartening and disappointing that this is the narrative that was pushed during, or even let's say before, when this case when public, that oh yes, this is what happens if you mess with married men or men that are already spoken for bad things before you. But it's like, she was with him first, and he goes and he pays the dowry for somebody else. Whose fault is that? Why are we throwing stones at her when he is the one who couldn't decide? Even if that was the case, let's talk about him deciding that, okay, I do not want Tsego now, I'm going to go and I'm going to pay dowry for somebody else. Why doesn't he end the relationship with her? Why doesn't he end the relationship? Because he didn't. He kept stringing her on. He played these games where one moment he was ignoring her, he wasn't talking to her. The next moment he's arranging times to meet up with her, calling her to his place, doing all this thing and just stringing her along and not being concise and clear that it is over, I'm going out with someone else and I'm marrying someone else. He never did that. He never did that. He made it seem like they were still together and everything was fine. He didn't even make it clear that he had paid lobola for someone else, because Tsego didn't know that. Tsego thought, he's my boyfriend, well, maybe he's cheating on the side, but we could still work this out. We're starting a family, we're having a baby, things might still change. The point I'm trying to make is that the ball was always in his court. He was the one who could have ended everything. He's the one who could have said, I don't want this relationship, let's end everything. But he chose to string her along. Now, let's fast forward to Muzi. Muzi, I said the actual assassin now. He's in jail, he's been caught, and he agreed to turn state witness. So most of this information comes from him. Now, who is this Muzi? Who is this Muzi guy? Who just wakes up in the morning and says, I've done a lot of vile things, but I think I'm gonna scale it up now. Now I'm gonna go after pregnant women. Who does that? So when Muzi is caught, he's asked, who are you? What is your relationship with Ntuthuko? And he's like, oh yes, I know Ntuthuko. We went to school together. We grew up together. We went to school together, primary, some high school. Even though he was a dropout because he was a criminal, he is a petty criminal. He's got a very long record. He's a little bit small-time gangster. He was doing things like break-ins, robberies, hijackings, but nothing as nefarious as murder. His things were just petty, if you think they're petty, but I don't think they're petty, because, you know, if you hijack a car, you have to have some sort of weapon to make people get out of their vehicles. So this is obviously a dangerous person. Now let's talk about him. Who is he? Muzi actually comes from a family where he was raised by his mother, a single mom, and he comes from a home where when the news broke that he was actually the assassin who had ended Pule's life, people who know him were very shocked. They were very shocked. He had a nickname in his side of the tracks where he's from, and his nickname was Cheese Boy. And the reason why his nickname was Cheese Boy is because he came from a family where he was very pampered. His mother really spoiled him. He never wanted for anything. He always had everything. He always had the best of everything. And throughout his adulthood, all of his petty crimes, his mother would bail him out. His family would always make it go away. They were always there to pick up the slack. He had 3 children with 3 different women that his mother was raising. He wasn't on any kind of child support. He wasn't providing for these children. His mother was the one who was taking care of these children. So you have a man here who has a pattern of being bailed out, figuratively and literally, by his mother. Everything that he did, she was always there to bail it out. He'd bail him out, make it go away, smooth it over. He gets that girl pregnant. Oh, I'll take the baby. I'll raise the baby. Right? He's being enabled his entire life, so he never sees any reason to grow. And this is what happens when people keep getting away with the bad things that they do. They scale up. You know how they say first you lie, and then when you lie you steal, and when you steal you kill. That's exactly how it goes. The crime just keeps piling up and you keep doing a lot of things. So the question is, what did he promise you? In order for you to end another person's life, what was the promise? How much was he going to pay you? He was going to pay him 70,000 rand, where by the time that the police catch up with him, he hasn't even been given a cent of that 70,000 rand. Now, I did say when I began talking about Ntuthuko that he had done very well for himself. He was working for a very prominent company, the South African the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. He was working for a very prominent company. He was doing well. So this petty crime, Muzi said, thought, he has the money, he'll give you the money, let me just do this for him, right? And then Muzi just drops more bombshells. Apparently they had tried to lure Tsego to a fake job opening. So now the family is also telling the same story, that there was a time when Tsego, just like every other young graduate in South Africa, you're constantly looking for a job, you're constantly applying, pushing yourself out there. So one day Tsego gets an SMS, she's been invited for an interview at this building at this time, she must show up. And for a little while they said she was excited about it, but as the days of the interview drew closer, Tsego was like, I'm not going, I just don't feel like it. Something doesn't feel like, something's very sketchy about this whole interview thing, so I'm not going. So Tsego didn't go. And that's just something to be said about somebody's intuition.
The man accused of killing 28-year-old Tsegofatso Pule pleading guilty. Musikaise Malepane entered into a plea agreement with the state, and his trial on premeditated charges resumed in the High Court in Johannesburg.
So now Muzi tells the police, Muzi Gaise tells the police that that was actually him and Shoba. They had orchestrated this whole interview thing where they were going to lure Tsegofatso there and he was going to end her life. But for some weird reason, Tsego never showed up. So they had to come up with a new plan. And the new plan was that he is going to have Tsego come to his place, Shoba, that is the boyfriend, and then from there I will call you, pretend you are an Uber, and you can come pick her up, and then you can end her life, but make sure that you make it look like suicide. Now on that day, during the trial, it was revealed that Shoba called Muzi Gaise over 21 to 27 times that day. Because even Muzi Gaise himself is saying that he was having second thoughts, because he was also just a bit scared that, okay, this is a woman and she's pregnant and I don't know if I want to do this. So guess what? Shoba was calling him the whole day that day, convincing him that you have to do this, you have to get it done, I'll pay you. And the question is, what is he afraid of? Why is this man so afraid that this girl is having a baby? It's just a baby. Just run away like all other deadbeat fathers. You don't have to kill anyone. You can just run away. That's what all the deadbeats do. And nobody ever does anything to them. So run away. Why does she have to die? That was the question. And I feel that I've seen a lot of coverage on this case. I just feel like it was never really delved into as to why. Why did she have to die this way? Because it's a baby. It's not like... But you don't really see the dots until you find out who the fiance is. Now let's talk about her a little bit. Even though her identity has been semi-protected, and I'm all about protecting her identity, and I will tell you why. Because one, I don't believe that she was the one who was sending Tsego those threatening messages. I think that was Ntutsugo. He thought that if he convinced Tsego that this woman is out there, she's looking for you, she wants to beat you, she wants to embarrass you, she wants to humiliate you and all of that, maybe this would be enough for Tsego to have this abortion. Mind you, a second abortion, because she had already had an abortion that he requested the first time around, right? So he was doing everything under the sun. This is why I believe that he was the one who was sending her those threatening messages. I don't believe it was ever any other woman. Because if you find out this woman and who she is, you realize that Ntutsuwa didn't do this because he was afraid of his fiancé finding out. He wasn't afraid of his fiancé finding out. Because if he was afraid of his fiancé finding out of anything, he never would have been cheating. He never would have been stringing Tsego along. Right? Who is this woman? Well, Ntutsuwa's fiancé, apparently her mother had passed on and she had inherited a very large amount of money, somewhere between 7 to 8 million rands. This is unconfirmed. Like I said, her identity is semi-protected because obviously she has nothing to do with this and no other life needs to go into peril because of this man, right? So this is not substantiated, but it is said, there's a couple of articles on it from very credible newspapers, that she had inherited a very large amount of money from the passing of her mom. And this is when this con man ran to go and pay the dowry, because now this was going to be his cash cow, right? This was his fallback plan. Should anything happen to him, his investments, his job, or his forex that he was doing on the side, at least my wife is rich, right? He wasn't in love with that girl that he's so afraid she's gonna find out. But no, that girl is rich and he didn't want to lose whatever money she was coming into this union with. This is what this whole thing is about. Money and him protecting his bottom line. That's it. He wasn't in love with Tsego. He wasn't in love with this other woman either. He is in love with himself and he was going to do whatever it took for him to keep both women right where he wanted them so he can have his cake and eat it too.
For Pule's friends, her death is a reminder that even the ones closest to you can hurt you.
Toxic relationships are very addictive. We all know how the story goes, you know. As soon as you start seeing a red flag, naturally, especially us women, we like to play the fixer. And unfortunately, we're learning the hard way that, you know, the moment you start seeing, you know, the second or third red flag, maybe just let it go.
That's what I believe. So now he tells the assassin Muzikayise that he's afraid of his wife, his fiance, finding out that he has gotten someone else pregnant. So that's why he needs Tsegofatso to be just gone, make it look like a suicide, because my wife can't find out. I'm terrified. No, you're not terrified of your wife finding out. You're terrified that if she finds out, she's leaving you, as she should, and then she's leaving with all her money. She is leaving with all her money. It wasn't about her. So that's why I'm all for her identity being protected. Fast forward, let's go on with the case. So now, Tutua gets arrested. When he gets arrested, he tries to tell the cops some story about Tsego had called herself that Uber. He doesn't know Muzikayise. He actually, when he came to pick her up, Tsego was talking to Muzikayise as if she knows him. At some point, his defense even tried to say that Tsego was dating Muzikayise, because when you are a liar and a horrible person, you will say anything to get out of it. Because obviously, she didn't even know him. And Muzikayise's mom was actually very shocked when she found out that the defense for Ntutuko is actually trying to spin this narrative that they didn't know each other. So Muzikayise's mom was like, yes, they do. They went to school together. I know him. They were friends. They were childhood friends. They know each other. So this whole thing of he doesn't know him, he knows they have a relationship with Tsego, it was all a lie. And it came up in court. The defense really tried. They tried to discredit Muzi. I mean, he is a petty criminal and a liar who will say anything to get out of trouble. But he wasn't trying to get out of trouble this time. For the first time in his life, he actually wasn't trying to get out of trouble. He was trying to just confess and face everything and tell the truth. And his story never changed, not once. He told the police everything, that he was going to be paid 70,000 rand for the murder, and he was to do it. And even when he was getting cold feet, Tutuko would call him incessantly, convincing him that yes, we have to do this, we have to go through with this, it has to happen. So Tutuko was arrested, he was hauled off to prison, and during the trial he changed counsel. He kept applying for bail, which was denied, of course. He applied for bail 3 to 4 times. He changed counsel a lot.
20 years instead of an entire lifetime behind bars. That's the demand of the man who was convicted for masterminding the murder of Tsegofatso Pule. Ntutuko Shobo is in court today, appealing to the judge's good character for a lighter sentence. A final decision and judgment will be heard when he appears once more tomorrow. ENC reporter Slindelo Masigane following the court developments. Let's go to her now live.
So these are all tactics that usually criminals do to delay the case, and hopefully they think that if they just delayed long enough, maybe 4 years or maybe 3 years, maybe the outrage would pass and all of that. But obviously nothing like that happened. The outrage didn't pass. People were still out there. They were hashtagging. There were political rallies around the murder of Tsego. The women's rights activists were holding protests, and they were just always there supporting the family, even during the trial, that no matter how much you try to delay this, we're still here and we still want justice for this girl. And it's not just about her, it's about every other woman who faced this scourge of femicide in South Africa, to know that yes, your lives are valuable, and if should anybody do this, there will be consequences that are very dire. So Muzikayise turns state witness. He confesses to the whole thing. He gives up all the messages, he gives up all the communication that they had, and the phone number that they were communicating with Ntutuko. Obviously at that point he had gotten rid of everything. He had gotten rid of any and every communication that he had ever had with Tsego, which is another red flag. Why would you delete the messages between you and the mother of your baby? That makes no sense. Why would you delete them? What was in there that you didn't want the police to see? Not that it mattered, because Muzigaise had already given them everything that they needed. So everything that he did was just a shallow attempt at trying to evade this whole thing. And during the trial, it was very noticeable that Tutuko was smirking. He was very unbothered. He'd roll his eyes. He'd drink his bottle. He'd just act like this whole thing was a giant inconvenience.
He still maintains his innocence. The only thing that comes to my mind is just those are the tendencies of what you can call a psychopath. That's the only thing that can come to my mind.
And of course, when we resume tomorrow, you're expecting nothing less.
Yeah, knowing very well that you don't know fuck. But it's okay. That's kulungi. Kulungi. The day will come.
That was his demeanor throughout the whole trial. And I really do believe that his counsel had him believing that he was going to get away with this because there's no evidence that's tying you to this murder. I don't know what, concrete evidence. That's what they kept saying. Where's the concrete evidence? I'm like, I mean, anybody can see this, that is him, Stevie Wonder done seen this. Anybody can see this. So at the end of the day, Muzigaise had already been sentenced to 23 years in prison for his role in this whole debacle, even as state witness. Because a lot of people think that if you become state witness, that means that you evade all and every consequence. That's not how it works. He was still sentenced, and he did really collaborate and tell everything. And he even wrote the family a letter trying to apologize. Obviously, I don't think that there's any amount of I'm sorry that could ever turn back the hands of time, because you could have been sorry in the moment when you did this. You could have told yourself that this is not right, I'm not doing this. You could have ran, you could have went to the police. He could have drove that car that night and told somebody that this man is trying to kill you. There are people who've done this. There are ample records and cases that have been covered where the would-be assassin says, you know what, I'm not doing this, and they go to the police. So he could have done that, but he was also so greedy. And this is what he's done his entire life. It hasn't worked for anything. His mother always bails him out, and should he need anything, he just goes and he steals something, he robs somebody, he carjacks somebody. That's how he's been getting through life. So he saw this as an easy paycheck. But now if you think about 70,000 rand and a person's life, not only a person, a baby, because Tsego had already named her baby, he named her Kamano, she knew the gender. They were planning, her best friend says that they were planning a baby shower. This was an entire life. This was an entire person who was happy and excited to welcome her baby and just move forward with her life. But he wouldn't allow her to do that. And that's because he was just so obsessed with control, but mostly obsessed with the other woman's money, because that was the end goal here. That's what he wanted. He wanted the other woman's money. So the trial came around, they delayed. There was COVID, obviously the pandemic, and then he also changed the counsel a couple of times, and his defense was saying all kinds of things. They were really trying to paint Tsego in the worst way, in the worst light possible, saying all kinds of things, saying that she was involved with multiple people, which obviously was a lie, but they just tried to just slander her memory so much. And it just, I'm so happy that people just saw through it and it didn't work. And obviously the judge also just didn't work. They really tried, and he was very lenient. He let them speak, he let them try and orchestrate this whole narrative. But at the end of the day, it was obvious to anyone that he had done this, because Muzigaise doesn't even know that he had no reason to end her life.
I am enjoined by the statute to apply the ordinary sentence for an offence of this nature. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison unless the parole authorities consider you fit for release in the fullness of time.
Emotions run high outside the Johannesburg High Court as convicted murderer has been sentenced to life imprisonment by the acting judge, Justice Stuart Wilson.
Pule's family hopes her story will never be forgotten, but that it will also serve as a lesson and prevent another young woman from losing her life.
So now we're going to talk about the most important segment of these videos that I'm hoping to get to, is that what do you do if something like this happens to you or a family member? What you can do should anything like this happen to you or any one of your loved ones is to act immediately. Listen to your intuition, listen to your instincts, go to the police immediately. And the police will try and talk you out of it because they are a bit slow on their feet and sometimes they're understaffed, so things like that happen. But do not allow them to talk you out of it. They will try to convince you that this person is gone with the boyfriend, they're gone with friends, or they just need time off. No. Tell them that I know this person, they would never ever ever not come home when they say they'd come home, and they'd never not answer their phones or their messages or social media or whatever, because things like that matter. As the youth, we always have our phones with us. It's really highly unlikely for somebody to just have their phone and decide, I'm just gonna let everybody worry about me just for fun. That doesn't happen. So you need to make sure that they do take you seriously and you go there with somebody so that they do not bully you. If you're a younger, go with an adult. If you can, go and then be the 3 or 4 of you. Make sure that they take serious the gravity of the situation. The next thing you can do is social media. Make sure that you get clear photos of the person who's gone missing. Try to be minimal makeup. Try to make it with not as much filter as possible, because I know we edit a lot. I'm guilty too, but for this case, we need a very clear picture so that people can be able to recognize the person should they see them, and post those on social media where you describe the height, what they were last seen wearing, complexion, all of that with clear pictures. And make sure that when you do go on social media, and I'm talking all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of them, make sure that you tag activists, you tag newspaper rooms, you tag journalists, you tag influencers, people who have some sort of influence and a large number of followers on those platforms. They will help get the message out there quicker. And do remember to update daily. If the person hasn't been found, wake up every day and update that this person is still lost. We still need your help. Another thing that we can do to make sure that we help and we act fast is to make sure that when you go somewhere, someone knows the truth. Somebody knows where you are and who you're with. Now, I know we don't want our parents in our business like that. So you tell somebody, a sister, a cousin, a friend, anyone that you can tell. Somebody needs to know your true whereabouts. Another thing you can do to keep yourself safe is to take pictures. Take pictures of the Uber. Take pictures of the number plates. Take pictures. Do not be afraid. It's rather you get scolded for taking pictures than for you to just sit there when you feel uncomfortable or like the situation might be a little bit unsafe. It's better for people to be mad at you for trying to keep yourself safe than for you to just put yourself in danger or be in a dangerous situation but you're too afraid to do anything about it. Another thing you can do, there are apps out there like Namola that can help. They're very helpful. Google it, please. It's Namola. It's very helpful and it can really get help out to you quick enough. It has become very unsafe for everybody, but mostly for women and children. So thank you very much for stopping by. I do hope that you guys can carry on and go down this journey with me. I will be covering a lot of cases, even recent ones as well. Not just the cases that made headlines and they made big splashes, but just cases in general, even though the others that we feel didn't get much coverage. That is something that I am prepared to do. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.